City County Planning Commission, please come to order. Ms. Martin, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Rich, Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Balance, Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Unseld, Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert, Commissioner Gay,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston,
ma'am.
Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am. You've all had a chance to review the summary minutes of the January 2nd meeting. Are there any corrections to those minutes? No corrections, then I'd ask for a motion.
Moved.
Thank you. And a second, thank you.
Commissioner Vitale,
Abstain.
Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert, Commissioner Gay,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston, Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Runner, I request that you order that the record include all statutory and regulatory provision, the Commission's file for each application, and the qualifications of each staff witness. I'd finally request that you administer the oath to those witnesses.
So ordered. Do you swear to tell the truth before this commission? Thank you all. Any questions on the preliminary subdivision and site development plans in the packet? No questions. Letters of credit and performance bond. You have an amended agenda at your seat. We now have 3 items. Any questions on those 3 items? No questions, and I'd ask for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. And a
Second.
second. Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert, Commissioner Gay,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren, Commissioner Madison,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston, Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am. We do not have any unfinished business, and that brings us to the first item tonight for public hearing is 2020-02 DP, Edmonton State Bank, Auburndale Nashville Land Company, LLC, Fugate J. Larry Revocable Trust, Pizza Hut, QPT Holdings, LLC, Penn Station Partners, Gwen Von Thong, and Real Nice Business Ventures, LLC, and the Chef's Oven, LLC, have filed an application to amend the General Development Plan. Conditions on a tract of land containing approximately 8.37 acres located at 2440, 2450, 2460, and 2512, a portion of those on Nashville Road and Penn Drive. This property is zoned highway business with a general development plan. And that's all I have to say about that. Staff report from Ms. Hurt.
Thank you, Chair Runner. I think my staff report may be shorter than you just announcing the application, but we'll see who can come out ahead on that. As you mentioned, the property is located along Nashville Road, Penn Drive, Patton Way, involving several parcels of land. We're here tonight to consider a development plan amendment for the highway business area outlined in pink. The properties were rezoned in 1996 from single family to highway business. The current future land use designation for the property is commercial. The future land use category description from the Focus 2030 Comprehensive Plan states that the commercial land use designation consists of a broad array of commercial development, including individual commercial businesses that may exist along a highway corridor or a business district, as well as larger planned shopping centers and office parks. Limited high-density multifamily uses are allowed to be mixed into commercial areas. These uses should be limited to upper stories or blended in or scattered among commercial uses. No more than 25% of any contiguous area designated as commercial should contain multifamily uses. Incompatibility should be addressed by applying the policies in LU 113 in conjunction with a general development plan. Moving on to the site characteristics review section. This is the boundary of the development plan amendment that's considered this evening. Approximately 3 acres of the property is already developed. Let me jump back to the aerial here, and you can see that there are existing commercial buildings along Nashville Road here, and the reason for the proposed amendment this evening relates specifically to this boundary of the property along this area here, and I'll get to that in just a second. There is a preliminary development plan that was submitted for the proposed use that has warranted the development plan amendment, and the proposed use is a branch bank. You can see it's proposed to be located in this general area here. More specifically, the proposed amendment, I'll get to that on page 3. The main item for your consideration this evening is number 7. You'll see that there is a proposal to remove number 7, which currently reads, "A 50-foot landscape buffer shall be installed and permanently maintained along the southern property line contiguous with the residential zoning district. The buffer shall consist of landscaping of 6-foot screening or combinations of landscaping and 6-foot screening." So that would be this property line here in that general vicinity. And there are 3 other amendments that are proposed. The first 2 are proposed to be removed because they are already required. And then number 4, the current zoning ordinance actually requires a minimum of 5% landscaping interior to a parking area. So that requirement's just simply outdated at this time, and that's why they're proposing to remove that. So moving on to the zoning ordinance requirements, Section 312.8 of the zoning ordinance outlines the process for amending a development plan or development plan conditions and states that an amendment to any development plan condition for an approved development plan shall be approved only if the proposed amendment remains consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, and upon a finding that there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area of the property in question, which were not anticipated at the time of the adoption of the general development plan or development plan conditions which are being amended, or that there have developed physical conditions which would not permit development of property in question in accordance with the general development plan or development plan conditions which are being amended. And so to address these findings, the applicant submitted the narrative in there on page 4. It says that at the time of the adoption of the current binding elements, the commercial development was unknown and the commercial rezoning of the property allowed for far more intensive uses than the property's now intended development as a bank branch. We identified 8 items from the Focus 2030 Comprehensive Plan that are applicable to the proposed development plan amendment. The first, LU-111 and LU-112, which look at our future land use map. As I mentioned earlier, the future land use designation is commercial. The proposed amendment to the development plan remains consistent with the future land use map and doesn't have any impact on that. Next, we looked at LU-113, which looks at compatibility. As I just mentioned, part of the applicant's justification to amend the general development plan includes a statement that the commercial development that is now proposed was not known at the time of the original rezoning, and that it is a far less intensive use than what would have been envisioned basically when the property was originally rezoned back in the 90s. However, there is no requirement in the development plan conditions that the undeveloped parcel subject to the removal of the 50-foot landscape buffer be occupied by such use. The Planning Commission should determine if the elimination of this landscape buffer, coupled with the permitted uses in the current highway business zone, is compatible with the area, and if the proposed development plan amendment complies with LU-113. Next, LU-214, PR 1.7, and NCR 1.1.6, which look at tree preservation. Again, the applicants are planning to remove the development plan condition that currently commits to a 50-foot landscape buffer. There is no commitment to preserve any of the existing vegetation on the located within the development, and so the Planning Commission should determine compliance with these items. And last, HN1 and HN1.3, which these look at suitability of infill development, and the Planning Commission should determine if the proposed development is a compatible infill project that preserves and enhances the character of the area. Last, I'll jump back to our points to consider on page 1. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the proposed development plan amendment is consistent with the future land use map. The proposed development plan amendment complies with the applicable criteria addressed in the site characteristics review, and also complies with the majority of the review criteria for site design. And again, the Planning Commission should consider if the proposed changes, including the reduction of the landscape buffer, given the permitted uses in highway business, is compatible with the surrounding area. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think that's it for the staff report. I guess I did take a little bit longer than you.
Yes, ma'am.
So Rachel, are they proposing to put any kind of anything back to separate the bank and put back these houses?
Zoning ordinance requires a minimum 10-foot buffer, and there are a couple of options that you can choose from as far as the planting type would go. You can use a mixture of evergreens and deciduous trees. There's an option to incorporate shrubs or potentially a fence, but that would be verified through the permitting process.
They just have to go.
Correct.
Really, they're asking to go from.
Yes.
Asking to go from 50 to 10?
Yes.
And they're putting a bank, will they have drive-through windows with speakers? How will they buffer that from the back of the houses?
The location of the drive-through would meet the minimum separation requirements in the zoning ordinance. The applicants may be able to speak more to the speaker element, but it would meet the minimum setback required by the zoning ordinance for that type of use with the drive-through.
They won't need to go to the Board of Adjustments for outdoor speakers or anything?
No.
Any other questions before we hear from the applicant? No questions? Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Chair Runner, members of the commission, Chris Davenport, here on behalf of Edmonton State Bank. One point I'll make, the application lists so many applicants because we're required to get 75% of the owners that were subject to the original conditions to sign off on this. So we've done that. Second point I'd like to make, and it goes to your question, Commissioner Volkert, and to your question, Commissioner Clark. One thing I wanted to make sure is that you probably see fewer requests like this than you do as a variance. So Edmonton State Bank is not requesting a variance from any requirement in the ordinance. When this property was rezoned in 1996, it had this extremely stringent landscape buffer requirement to it. And what we're asking is to resort to what's required in the zoning ordinance. We're not asking to go below that. We meet all other design requirements for our branch, including speaker distances. We don't need variances for that. We don't need variances for parking. We don't need any variances. We're asking to revert back to what's required in the zoning ordinance. I pointed out in the application that we've got some certainty now as to how this is going to be developed. And I would argue that a bank branch is not toward the high intensity when it comes to highway business uses. Obviously, the branch is closed. I kid my banker friends, they're closed like 58 federal holidays a year or whatever it is. The other point I would make, and I talked to Ms. Hurd about this, is when this property was rezoned as a part of an 8-acre tract, but it was rezoned, that 8-acre tract was part of a much broader rezoning in that area that included the multifamily development that's, pretty significant, the Kroger shopping center, all that was done at the same time, as my understanding. And at that time, the interior streets weren't exactly known. So what's happened as this has been developed is the area that's impacted by this one specific buffer, if you look at the depiction here, is much more narrow and small in size compared to what it could have been. And so my feeling on this is we now know that property line is not going to be adjoining a big box operation with freight coming in and out, or those things that could have been in a highway business zone if this much broader development had been developed differently than it did. So those things are now known that weren't known in 96, I would submit to you. And again, I would reiterate, we are not asking for variances. We're not asking for less buffer than what our ordinance says is proper given these two uses. Everything else stays the same.
Chris, if I understand correctly, you're requesting to move the 50-foot landscape buffer. The reason for that is a local bank is much more palatable than what could have been there in the past, and that may have been a reason for the 50-foot landscape buffer in the beginning. But you will put in a 10-foot buffer as required.
Yes, that's required
correct?
by the ordinance. We're not asking for a variance from that.
Okay.
And the other argument I would say, Commissioner Graham, is not only that the bank is going on that corner, but the remaining acreage that Rachel spoke to is very small in size compared to what could have been developed. At that time when this was going highway business, this commission would not have known whether the Kroger may have wound up right there with a 10-foot landscape buffer or other highway business uses. Given the size now that's left of the remaining area, I think that's a legitimate consideration.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Do we know what's going in this one area here that's also being included?
So
I guess that would be, this is south, and that would be west.
the seller that's selling to us still owns that tract, and I think what Commissioner Clark, where's the little pointer? think, Commissioner Clark, you're referring to this area?
Yes.
So I believe the seller still owns that, the seller to my client. But that, I don't know, but that's not applicable to to what we're talking about, because it doesn't adjoin single family to the south. So the 50-foot buffer that's in place is not applicable to this tract anyways, if that makes sense.
Any other questions? Do we have any questions from anyone in the audience? Yes, ma'am. We'll let you come to the mic. We'll swear you in and then let you ask your question. Yes, ma'am. If you would state your name and address.
Gloria J. Thomas, 2540 Nashville Road.
And you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. You can make your statement or ask your question.
Well, I don't have a pointer to the map, but my
She
house,
needs the pointer, help with the pointer.
Here.
Right there?
Yeah.
Would you like me to do that?
Yeah.
Just point right here. This is her house. This is Nashville Road.
Yeah.
That's her
Property
house.
road,
Is,
So this is your house.
That's covered up by trees. You can barely see
okay,
it.
okay, that's your house.
Okay.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
My house faces Nashville Road, and it's also on Oak Grove Way. So, my question is, will their property, just in case mine becomes available for business, will that interfere with me selling my place to a business place? Yeah, I mean, you know, because I was told by my community that I was not allowed to put in an antique store off my carport. So, of course, I complied. Now, businesses already moved around me, like Medical Center, Dollar General. The dentist is still across the street from me. And then Panton Way with the empty lot that he's talking about for their bank. So if it was to happen to come up that somebody wanted to offer me money for my property for a business, is that going to interfere with me selling my property to a person if they decided to buy my property for a business?
They would have to come to this board and ask for a zone change. So that's not an answer we probably can give tonight, a yes or no. That is more of a, depending on who came to buy it, they would bring their, whatever they wanted to do to this board and ask for a zone change.
Well, I had somebody about a year ago. I got his business card in a different purse. I forgot to bring it. Offered me some money for a business, but he said he had to check into planning and zoning. So I don't know if he got a no or yes. I haven't heard from him yet. I don't want to appear too anxious, you know, because
He would have to submit an application with the planning and zoning, and then it would be brought here for either approval or not to be approved.
It would be reviewed just like this one is being
Yes.
reviewed today.
I couldn't get a maybe on that.
Maybes are hard to come by these days.
Tim might give you a maybe.
I'm waiting for a maybe.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm just concerned about that. Other than that, I have no problem as long as it don't interfere with me. If somebody wanted to offer me money for my property, which I learned is a great deal worth of money right now, I'm just waiting for the lucky buyer.
This may be a
Yes,
question for
ma'am.
staff, but in all fairness, I think there's nothing that could happen here that would interfere with anyone who wanted to apply for a zone change on her property. Is that correct? Yeah.
Well, that's all I wanted to know, guys.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your patience and your time.
No, ma'am, thank you, thank you. Do we have anyone else in the audience with a question or opposition? No opposition, no more questions? Then I would ask for a motion, please.
Make the motion to approve the proposed general development plan amendment docket number 2020-02 DP based upon testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed general development plan amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Further, I also find that there have been major changes of economic, physical, social nature in the area of the property in question, and I request that the findings of fact and recommendation include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you, and a second, thank you.
Commissioner Madison,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Houston, Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am. Motion carried. Yes, ma'am, you had one other question? If you could come back to the mic, so we can hear you.
Totally forgot. The neighborhood that was put a neighborhood behind our neighborhood years ago, about 15 years ago. And then when y'all widen the streets, there's dynamite and blasting allowed. And I went to the person on State Street over there to report property damage because they cracked the bottom of my foundation. Are they gonna pay for any foundation damage? Is just in case they use dynamite or anything like that? I just wanna know if they're gonna pay for any of my damage to my property.
I don't think the bank's planning on using dynamite on this project.
Well, you use dynamite in front of my house to put that sidewalk in. Okay.
Yeah.
Highway transportation.
Yeah, that's not something this board would have any involvement in.
The blasting, all blasting's regulated by the Kentucky, the state of Kentucky, through the Division of Environmental, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but.
I didn't pursue it because I figured you all, you wasn't in charge probably at the time, but the people who were would volunteer and say, you know what, we caused this damage to your house because I reported it. I'm not a nagger. Maybe I should be. But the property, my foundation is still damaged and nobody's volunteered to fix it up. So I don't know how to get them to do it. So I just concerned about further damage to my foundation, to my house. So I just want to be reassured that they would cover any excess damage if they was to use blasting materials. Because it does cause like a tremor or an earthquake.
Ms. Thomas, I can't imagine there'll be any blasting, okay? That's not the type of thing that are usually necessary.
Well, they run a sewer system right beside my house before they run a sewer system right beside my property, on the property that you bought. So you might want to know that there's a sewer system there. So I made an offer to buy in, because I'm on a septic tank, and to see if I can join the sewer, but they deny me on that too. So
That's, I'm so sorry, but yeah, that's all that we can help you with here.
yeah,
Is-
okay, well, I was just trying to cover all my,
Oh, yes, ma'am, I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you once again for your patience and time.
Thank you. The next item is docket 2020-01 Flume, Secret Properties LLC, and Danny Smith filed an application for a future land use map amendment on a portion of a tract of land containing approximately 3.164 acres located at 4603 Sunnyside-Gotts Road from agriculture to rural density residential. And also on docket number 2020-02 Z County, those same applicants have also filed to rezone a portion of that same land at that same address from agriculture to residential estate with a general development plan. And we'll have the staff report from Ms. Ramsey.
Thank you, Chair Runner. We had a pre-application conference on November 20th last year for the property you see outlined here in yellow, which is a portion of 4603 Sunnyside-Gotts Road. As Chairrunner's already stated, that property is zoned agriculture currently. Its current use is agriculture, and around there is mostly agricultural uses with some single-family peppered in around there, some vacant tracts, couple commercial, public, and then public institutional there. And as Chairrunner's also stated, the current future land use map designation is also agriculture. And the applicants are seeking to change both the future land use map and the zone of this portion of the property in order to develop the property with a maximum of 3 single-family residential lots, as you see here. So the proposed density of this development would be 0.95 dwelling units per acre. The proposed RE zone that the applicants have requested, if that flume amendment to rural density residential is successful, the RE zone is a potentially compatible zoning designation in the rural density residential flume category and may be appropriate if the commission determines that the proposed development is compatible with the area. On your first page, your staff report there in the section of compatibility with the surrounding development, just point out that a site characteristic review indicates there are adequate facilities and infrastructure available to support the proposed development, with exceptions noted regarding road width and water availability, which we'll kind of talk about more in a second. There is a portion of a sinkhole and a portion of a wetland located on the property, and there's also a cluster of mature trees located on the property. So with that, I'm going to move on to page 2, where we have the future land use map information there, and LU 114 mentioned there that details procedures for amending the future land use map. The applicants included this information to address that criteria. They simply said, please see the application for zoning map amendment being filed concurrently, which they have chosen to address with their development plan conditions, which we'll also read in just a second. Below that, in the site characteristics review, we've talked about the road width. Sunnyside-Gotts Road is currently 17 feet wide. Water adequacy, the property does not have adequate water flow to meet the minimum fire protection requirements, but is exempt because only 3 lots are proposed. Prime farmland, the property contains a soil type that is classified as farmland of statewide importance. Soil suitability, the property contains soil types that are classified as somewhat limited and very limited regarding soil suitability for septic tank absorption fields. And going on to the next page, cultural or historical resources. The existing home on the property was built in 1910. However, it is not a locally designated historic property, nor is it listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Below that, I will get into just a little bit the site design and compatibility review to talk about the surrounding area. With the surrounding density, the majority of the properties in the area are large agricultural tracts, and there are a handful of smaller rural density residential tracts also in the vicinity. Surrounding architectural features, there are several manufactured homes and a mobile home in the vicinity. Home sizes range from 756 square feet to 2,969 square feet, with a median home size of 1,400 square feet. Building materials review, the existing homes in the area are mainly constructed of vinyl. A few homes are also incorporate brick as an exterior material, and there is one home that utilizes metal for the exterior material. And building orientation, existing homes along Sunnyside-Gotts Road are oriented to face that roadway. With that, I will go through the development plan conditions that the applicants have supplied. Number 1, no mobile or manufactured homes will be permitted on the property. Number 2, each new single-family residence will have a minimum 1,500 square footage of living space and at least a 1-car attached garage. Number 3, each residence will be constructed of brick, stone, vinyl, or concrete-based siding. Plain face block will not be permitted as a visible finished material. Number 4, the development will be limited to 3 additional access points on Sunnyside-Gotts Road. Additional access points will be coordinated with Warren County Public Works. Number 5, each lot shall obtain a permit from the Barren River District Health Department for septic service approval prior to recording a plat. Number 6, each new single-family residence shall be required to maintain a front yard setback similar to the setbacks of existing homes on the same side of Sunnyside-Gotts Road as to maintain an aesthetic in the community. Number 7, during the construction of a new single-family residence on Lot 3 will require the demolition of the current residence, referring to that existing residence we just spoke about. The current residence is in a state that it is not feasible to remodel and update and impractical for current energy and safety standards. Before demolition, any local or state rehab group would be welcome to enter and obtain any material useful in their community goals. Number 8, all existing trees located on the perimeter of the development will be maintained during construction. Furthermore, all trees not in the residential footprint will not be removed. Number 9, any development on the property will be limited to areas outside any designated sinkhole or designated wetland. So below that, we have the Focus 2030 category review. There were 19 items that were called out. The application complies with 7 of them, and 10 of them are left up to your determination, and 2 of them did not comply. So I'll go over those 12 that were not ones that flat out complied. LU 111 and 112 dealing with the flume and if it's compatible with the surrounding area, as well as LU 113. Proposal may comply with LU 2. This body should determine if the proposal is a high-quality development that includes design standards tailored to protect the character of the Gott community. The proposal generally complies with LU 231, as the applicants committed in Development Plan Condition 4 that the development will be limited to 3 additional access points on Sunnyside-Gotts Road, and that any additional access would be coordinated with Public Works. LU 29, the Planning Commission should determine if the proposed development protects the Gott community and if it is in keeping with the character of the area. NCR 241, the Planning Commission should determine if the proposed development will result in increased pressure, amount of development pressure on the countryside, and that's specifically in reference to the roadway that is less than the 18-foot minimum standard for county roads, and the water service there. NCR 25 and NCR 253, the proposal does not comply with those. The applicants do not plan to incorporate the existing historic home located on the property as part of the development. And then we just make reference to Development Plan Condition number 7 that I read just a moment ago dealing with that home. HN 21 and HN 4, the Planning Commission should determine if the location of the planned development is suitable for the proposed housing type and if the proposed residences are believed to enhance the array of housing options available in the area. And the Planning Commission should also determine compliance with HN 23 as the existing home, constructed in 1910, is proposed to be demolished. The applicants have indicated that the current residence is in a state that it is not feasible to remodel and update, as they have mentioned in their development plan condition, but have not included information as to whether or not the proposed housing will be available for low and moderate income families. So with that, I'm going to go back to page 1 with the points to consider. This body should consider if the argument provided by the applicants to amend the flume meets the criteria outlined in LU 114 of the comprehensive plan. If the flume amendment is approved, the proposal would be consistent with the flume and the rural residential category. The proposed development complies with the majority of the site characteristics review criteria, and the proposed general development plan complies with the majority of the review criteria for site design and meets the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance. Compatibility of the proposed development should be determined by the Planning Commission. So that is all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicants are also here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, questions?
Monica, can you go to this, I guess it would be the aerial?
Aerial? Mm-hmm.
Because I'm trying to figure out how this is laying out on this aerial. Because it looks like on this, that where the house is on lot number 4, where you had indicated lot 3.
Hmm?
Is that lot 4? Should it be? I mean, is this what's laying out here?
I'll go back to
Well, then
the exhibit. Yeah, right here, this says lot 3, and you can see they've drawn in the house there where it currently sits.
Okay, so this isn't the full, this aerial doesn't show us the full.
No, that aerial is just outlining the portion of 4603 Sunnyside-Gotts Road to be rezoned.
Okay.
So it's a larger tract, but
Okay.
just,
On
yeah.
this, it shows 5 lots. But what we've got on aerial is only 3 of the lots, correct?
Right. They only have to rezone 3 acres. So in order to get the 1 acre or one and some change acres for each lot they're wanting to get. Yeah.
I just couldn't figure it out when it showed 5 lots here, but it sure didn't show 5 lots on here. So
Right.
that's
No,
what I was trying to.
No, I understand. Yep. No, it's just the 3.164 acres that we're considering tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
It appears that 2 structures are indicated on this, this lot layout. There's one on Lot 3, and then there appears to be one on Lot 4. Could you point to the structure on Lot 4 in the aerial?
I believe that is right, you talking about right here, this right here?
Well, it indicates, appears to indicate 2 structures, one on Lot 3 and one on Lot 4.
The
Am I
applicants may,
misreading that?
no, there is a structure indicated there. The applicants may want to explain that further, but I believe that is referencing this right here, this structure here.
I see, okay.
Yeah. They're just showing what's existing out there today. Yeah.
Any other questions before we hear from the applicant? Thank you, ma'am. And we can hear from the applicant. Do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, ma'am.
Do we have any questions for the
I have
applicant?
a question
We have a
on,
question. If you come in, we'll get your name and address and swear you in and let you answer the question.
My name is Chris Siegert. I live at 545 Browning Road, Rockfield, Kentucky.
And you swear to tell the truth.
I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
Mr. Siegert, on page 3, General Development Plan number 3, each residence will be constructed of brick, stone, vinyl, concrete, or concrete-based siding. Plain face block will not be permitted as a visible finished material. What percentage of brick, stone, vinyl, concrete do you anticipate?
I anticipate the majority of each house would be vinyl, probably 70–80%. The foundation would be block and brick. If we used a plain face block, then we would brick over that up to the vinyl point. If we did any split face block, then those would be allowed to be exposed in the general development plan.
So if you use plain face block, you're going to put brick over it, or you're not going to use plain?
If we do use any plain face block, there will be a brick facade over that.
The rest of it will be that.
Yes. And we left ourselves open if someone came to us and wanted to have a hardy board house, then we would do that as well. So.
That was my question as well. Are we close there? Are there split face block and vinyl homes in that area?
Based on what's in the area, there's kind of a mixture. There are mostly vinyl homes there, but there are some that incorporate brick as well, and then one home out there is metal too. So it's kind of a mixture, but mostly vinyl based on our density.
Do you plan to build these homes, or do you plan to sell them?
Plan on building the homes.
Plan on building them?
Yes.
Currently, is your plan to build these homes with split face block foundations?
I haven't picked out the plan yet, but no, I probably will do plain face with brick.
Would you commit to 50% of these to be brick veneer foundations?
Sure.
Let's do that. That gives us
Problem.
it gives us a mix anyway, and that way, if he's got a client that, I don't know if you're going to do them as spec or if you're going to do them for custom, but if you've got a client, that opens the door for that as well.
The plan is spec right now, but so.
Do you have any other questions? Yes, sir.
I just want to clarify. So are you keeping that existing home that would be on Lot 3?
No,
You're not, so they
no.
take it down. So,
And the structure on Lot 4 is a barn.
so I guess my only comment is 50% would be 1.5 homes, so we need to.
Weird.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've
So
painted
pick
myself into a corner here.
One,
haven't I?
one or two, I guess. I don't,
On the east and the west elevation.
How about 2/3?
There we go. Let's do that.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the commissioners before I open it up to the audience?
Have you talked to the fire department out there about this? If the water capacity is not as good as it could be for these, a number of houses?
I have not.
Not talked to
No.
anybody?
I spoke to Warren County Water, or excuse me, they spoke to Warren County Water and kind of assessed where is it a 6-inch line that was out there so far away? I mean, we understood that this is about the largest development that could go with the water level that could.
Definitely a water issue out there. I live out there. Water issues, and my fear is if you've got a vinyl house, it's gonna go up like that. And that's a concern if there's no available water anywhere near that.
Understand.
I may add one item that might help with that. If you look on page 10 of your staff report on the existing land use map, just above the label for Porter Pike, you'll see a green designated property, public, and that's the nearest fire station that's right there in that green shaded area, right above the Porter Pike label.
Yes.
Yep.
So do we know approximately how far that is, Rachel?
Let's see. Probably, let's see if we can scale it off. As the crow flies, about, not even a mile, let's see.
So it's less than a mile?
Oh, it's long, no, it's longer than a mile.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, in the road, not a crow flying, but a road.
right, yeah. No, because it's only like, so. It's about 2,000 feet traveling along the road, so not even half a mile.
Not even a half a mile. Ms. Clark, is that?
It's right here, so.
Okay. That's closer than I thought. Okay.
Do we have any questions from anyone in the audience or any opposition? Yes. Thank you, sir. We'll get your name and address, swear you in, and let you ask your question.
My name is Jim Maris. I live at 4670 Sunnyside-Gotts.
And you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
My basic questions are just the impact with the road and how additional drives would be installed and what the traffic impact would be. It is a very narrow road and you're almost required to kind of pull off. And that area there is basically a ditch on one side and a culvert on the other. So I'd just like to see how that's planning on being addressed.
I think staff addressed the.
I don't think there's any plans to address any of the road work.
The entrances
As the
will have to
drives.
be, I think part of your question was entrance and exit to the properties. Did I understand that correctly? So they will have to apply with I think it's Kentucky Transportation Department, correct?
This would be with the Warren County Public Works Department.
Public Works Department.
And,
they'll assess line of sight, all of those things.
Yeah, they consider site distance, and then also we defer to them as our sister agency because they're the transportation experts on what sort of use or what type of development would trigger improvements to the road. And with the number of lots proposed, they're not requiring any upgrades or improvements to the roadway. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Do we have any opposition to this request? No questions, no opposition, then I'll ask for a motion, and we will need two. The first one to address the Flume Amendment, and should that pass, then we will act on the zone change request.
We need to get the change in the general development plan conditions updated.
Well, I think the applicant was at the podium when that agreement was reached.
I didn't know if you had to word it or down
And
or
I
anything.
turned to my lawyer here to the left, and she confirmed that she had that language down. And so I think we're square on his agreement that 2 of the 3 homes would have brick veneer covering plain-faced block foundation.
Make the motion to approve the proposed future land use map amendment docket number 2020-01 Flume, based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed Flume amendment has met the directive to amend the Flume as outlined in LU 114 in the comprehensive plan. Further, I request this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Houston,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Madison, Commissioner Vitale, Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert, Commissioner Gay,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
Ma'am.
Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am. The motion carried. Now we need to act on the zone change request.
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and condition upon a general development plan docket number 2020-02 Z County. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance and objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you. We need a second.
Second.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Madison, Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Vitale, Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
Ma'am.
Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am. The motion carried. Our recommendation will be for approval. Thank you. Brings us to new business, and we need to have an election of our officers. So we need to get a report from
Let's
our
make my mo-
nominating committee.
Let's make my motion. Mr. Runner, I'd like to make the motion that Velma Runner will stay as chairman and that Dean Warren will become vice chairman.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Vitale, Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am, and the motion carried, and thank you all.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Will serve well.
Ms. Runner, stay healthy.
That is my.
I think the vote.
That's more important, that's more important than all this other
That
stuff.
is my plan, and I would like to just, we had a reception before this meeting to honor Mr. Houston for his service on the commission for all, I think about 20 years, maybe 20 plus, and we're so grateful for that, and we know the county is too, and we just take that this is your last meeting, and you will be missed.
Thank you.
Thank you for service.
Anything else? Speech is, anything else? Nothing else? Meeting will be adjourned. Thank you all.